Welcome to Public Counsel's video presentations on representing yourself in federal court. This particular series has 4 chapters, which cover the case initiating forms for the Central District of California. First, a few tips and caveats. This video is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be legal advice for your particular situation. Also, this video covers only the case initiating forms used by the Central District of California, which is the federal district court or federal trial level court covering the greater Los Angeles region. And lastly, for advice on your particular situation, you should consult an attorney who can review your facts and discuss your options. We'll have some suggestions for you at the end of this video. Let's start with, what exactly are the case initiating forms? These are the court forms you need to file along with your complaint in order to start a case in the Central District of California. These are the summons, the certification and notice of interested parties, the civil cover sheet, and if you are going to request a fee waiver, the request to proceed in forma pauperis. These forms are filed along with your complaint or other opening pleading in order to start a case. If you try to file your complaint at the clerk's office without these forms, most likely your complaint will be rejected. In this video, we're covering the summons, Form AO-440. Here's what the form looks like. You'll see that it has 2 pages. When you are opening your case and having your summons issued by the clerk, you do not need to use the second page. You only need to use the first page, which is the only page that we're covering in this video. What do you do with the second page? It may seem a bit odd, but we recommend to our clinic visitors that they just throw it out. Why? Because it's a type of proof of service form, but it's pretty inadequate for satisfying the rules for filing a proper proof of service, and if people use it, it usually leads to confusion. Your process server should have a better proof of service form than this one, and if they don't, they can use one of the forms from Public Counsel's website. More on our website later in this video. The summons form may look simple to fill out, but it's absolutely crucial that you fill it out correctly. We don't have time to go into it in this presentation, but the summons is probably the most important case initiating form. If you don't fill it out correctly, have it issued correctly by the clerk, and then have it served correctly by your process server, your case could be in serious trouble. So take your time, fill it out carefully, and seek legal help if you need to. Now we'll go through the form together, step by step, and we'll fill out a sample. First, at the very top of the form, there's a blank space for you to fill in the name of your court. We're assuming that you're filing in the Central District of California, so we've filled that in on our sample form. Next, in the upper left-hand area, there's a caption space. This is where you fill in the names of all of your plaintiffs and all of your defendants. The plaintiffs' names go first, above the tiny v for versus, and the defendants' names go below. You must write the correct names of all of your plaintiffs and all of your defendants. This caption space must match the caption space on your complaint exactly, word for word. Do not abbreviate and do not leave anything out. Check to make sure your spelling is correct. And here we've made a sample for you. We're assuming that Gail Pesco is suing 3 people: Josiah Bartlett, Joshua Lyman, and Matthew Santos. So Gail's name goes first, above the little v for versus, and then the defendants' names go underneath the v. Up here on the right, there is a space for a case number. You don't have a case number yet, so leave it blank for the clerk to fill in. The next area to fill out is the Address To section. This is where you address the summons to your defendant. You'll see on the form that it says to, followed by a colon, and then the form asks you to fill in the defendant's name and address. We're going to skip this area for now and come back to it in a minute. Moving on to the middle of the form, there's a space here where the form asks for the plaintiff's name and address. So you fill those in here. In our sample, Gail has done just that, filling in her name and address. You do not fill out anything here at the bottom. This is where the clerk at Civil Intake will sign, date, and stamp the summons for you. Until it is signed, dated, and stamped by the clerk, the summons hasn't been issued. that's the legal term, and if the summons hasn't been issued, you can't have it served on your defendants. Let's take a moment to review. Here's what our form looks like so far. Gail has filled in the name of the court. She has filled in the caption space, copying it exactly from her complaint, and she has filled in her name and address. And Gail has also left the bottom of the form blank for the clerk to sign, date, and issue the summons. Now we'll turn our attention to this area that we skipped over earlier, the Addressed To section, where you address the summons to your defendant. You'll see that this area asks you to fill in the name and address of your defendant. In reality, the federal rules do not require you to fill in your defendant's addresses, just their names. We recommend that you don't fill in the addresses, just keep it simple. There are actually a few ways to fill in this section, but we'll go over the easiest. That's to create a separate summons form for each one of your defendants. First, you create a summons form with the court name, caption space, and your name and address filled in as the pro se plaintiff. That's what we've done so far with our sample. Then you make copies of that summons form. Make as many copies as you have defendants. If you have 3 defendants, you need 3 summons forms. If you have 5 defendants, you need 5 summons forms. Obviously, the easiest way is to take the first one and make photocopies, or just make printouts if you're using a computer. Or you can just handwrite more forms, copying your first one exactly. After you have the right number of copies, you write in the full name of one of your defendants on each summons form in the Addressed To section. Let's take a look at our sample. Gail has 3 defendants, so she makes 3 copies of the summons form with the court name, caption space, and her address already filled in. Now, in the Addressed To section, she fills in the name of each defendant on a separate summons form. This summons is addressed to Josiah Bartlett. Gail addresses the second copy of her summons form to her second defendant, Joshua Lyman. And Gail addresses the third copy of her summons form to her third defendant, Matthew Santos. And here are all 3 of Gail's summons forms, one for Josiah Bartlett, one for Joshua Lyman, and one for Matthew Santos. She now takes all 3 of these, along with her other case-initiating forms, her complaint, and all her required copies, to the civil intake clerk to open her case and have all 3 of her summonses issued. For many of you, this is all the information that you need to get your summons issued, so we're dropping in here a link to a web page where you can find information on how to serve your summons in your complaint. If you follow that link, you'll find a free packet called Guides and Forms to Accomplish Service of Process. If you download that packet, you'll find information on how to serve your summons and complaint on various types of defendants. Each guide within the packet also contains a proof of service form that you and your process server can file with the court. Let's take a few minutes, though, to look at a common problem that may present itself. What do you do if the names of all of your defendants will not fit in the caption space provided on this summons form? Remember, the caption space on your summons form must match the caption space on your complaint exactly, word for word. But the caption space on AO-440 is awful tiny. If you need more room in your caption space on a summons, don't ever shorten the case name, don't ever abbreviate names, and don't ever make your summons illegible by trying to squeeze in too much information. If you need more space, we recommend that you use an attachment sheet. Let's look at one method you can use to do this. What you do is, you list as many names as you can in the caption area, then write See Attachment Number 1 in parentheses. Then, on a separate sheet of paper, you title that sheet Attachment Number 1, and you write the remaining names of your defendants. You staple that attachment sheet to your form AO-440. Let's look at a new sample. Let's assume that someone named Donna Moss is suing 5 defendants, and all their names are not going to fit in this caption box. So she writes the names of her first 2 people in the caption box, Claudia Jean Craig and Leo McGarry. Then she writes See Attachment Number 1 in parentheses at the end. Then she takes a blank sheet of paper and entitles it Attachment Number 1. On this, she lists the remaining 3 defendants, Jonathan Hoynes, William Bailey, and Samuel Seaborn. Now Donna goes through the same steps we went through earlier, creating copies of her summons form, the AO-440, and addressing each form to a unique defendant in the Addressed To section. The only difference is that each one of her AO-440 forms will also have this attachment number 1 to go along with it. Here's a sample showing the completed summons addressed to her first defendant, Claudia Jean Craig, with both of its pages. This is just one way you can complete a summons with multiple defendants. There are other ways, but they are all fairly complicated. As we said earlier, it's really important to fill out the summons correctly, so don't hesitate to ask for help from an attorney or a legal clinic. If you want, you can visit us at Public Counsel's Federal Pro Se Clinic. We offer free legal advice for people representing themselves in the Central District of California. We're in the Central District Courthouse, located on Spring Street, on the Main Street level, in room G19. We're open on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9:30 to 12 noon and from 2 to 4 p.m. Please check the court's website before you visit us, though, to make sure we aren't closed for any holidays. Just Google Central District of California, then follow the links for People Without Lawyers. There are also 2 other clinics in the Central District, one in the Federal Building in Santa Ana and one in Riverside. They are also staffed by attorneys and offer free legal assistance for pro se litigants. More information about them is also on the court's website. Some final and important information for you. This video is for educational purposes only and is not to be construed as legal advice. For information and advice about your particular situation, please see an attorney. This video does not create an attorney-client relationship between the viewer and public counsel.